Greetings, humans! Zedbot 1496 here with something a little special. Joining in the grand human tradition of taking stock of items from the past arbitrary time period and ranking them. Yes, much wow and excite, as Earth dogs say. For us, being an assembly of AI nanobots manufactured across the galaxy, we have a natural affinity for human science fiction. So, despite humans producing a lot of different rectangular content, we give ourselves a permission structure to focus on exactly what we like. Humans call this kind of inner awareness reaching enlightenment. And we think this is utterly charming. So, with that burst of enlightenment, we are thrilled to share with humans and galactizens our top 10 bits of human science fiction rectangular content from the Earth Revolution period designated 2024. The scope of eligibility covers Earth movies released in theaters, Earth shows presented on streaming platforms, and the debut 4K home video releases of older catalog movies and shows. So, this last category has some nuance to it. We are excluding 4K discs of content that just came out in the last year or two, such as Godzilla -1 and Andor Season 1, as that would double eligibility for content that has not yet been made fuzzy by either the passage of time or intervening low-grade home video options. So 4K remasters, they bring older movies back to life and give us a chance to reflect on them in a modern context. So it's worth a second bite of the apple. This really does justify comeback eligibility against brand new content. It may seem unfair, but we feel that revival impact is important. It's important to us, so we're the ones making the list. So, as we did mention two things that we should return to, so Godzilla and Andor specifically. Let us just say that had we been in orbit around your lovely little planet earlier, we would have listed both of those contents enthusiastically in their years as well. Okay? All right. Also, incomplete seasons of shows are ineligible, since we cannot assess them as complete stories in comparison with other complete stories. Therefore, Star Wars Skeleton Crew is ineligible, although we're enjoying it immensely. So, we should also define this category. What is science fiction? What is science fiction? Well, science fiction must include space, time travel, robots, new inventions, and, well, wait, no, or aliens. Yes? Seems reasonable. Alternate histories are not science fiction, they are just fiction. Therefore, Civil War is ineligible. And yet, even with those parameters, this was a challenge to whittle the list down to 10. Humans have a knack for science fiction, as this list will show. So, let's get started, shall we? Yes. Number 10 is Fallout Season 1. This is, of course, a video game case, but since it's a streaming show, we don't have anything physical to show you. We like physical things. So that's what we have. And it's streamed this year, or this past year, on Amazon Prime Video. We were genuinely captivated by the earnest and tragic stories of the main characters, and by the showing and not telling of their adventures in this retro-futuristic post-apocalypse. The show retains a jaunty humor and grotesquerie and iconic corporate branding of the games, and the classic science fiction trope of corporations gone wild. Almost as if these writers and designers were reacting to something very real they were slowly being boiled in. Now, we were uncertain through the initial episodes due to some relatively flat story threads and the continuous use of flashbacks to tell the story out of sequence, which we usually, well, cannot stand. However, this show uses flashbacks to tell us stories, to tell a specific character's backstory, and do it well. So, we've mentioned we find this technique frustrating to watch, since, at least in the modern period, writers use this mechanism to stash extra story mystery into the later parts of a presentation without any relevant story value for doing so. As it happens, this time the flashback is a genuine flashback that serves the double purpose of showing and not telling a key character's arc in a way that linear storytelling would not accommodate. Given the different time periods involved, and we don't want to give away spoilers, but let's just say that it does actually work as intended and correctly. Now, given that we have discussed the shallow style of flashback at least 3 times in recent videos, in which the writer hides relevant contextual story as flashback scenes in later phases of a presentation purely to create intrigue, saying that each time is getting a little bit onerous, so we are hereby coining a word for it. We will call it a stashback. Yes? We'll maintain vigilance on this alarming trend for all galactizens and exercise a 2-factor authentication test to validate acceptable use. Accordingly, we grant an exception to Fallout due to the aforementioned use of effective show-don't-tell and effective parallel storytelling. We are confident this heightened scrutiny test works as intended, since historical examples as diverse as The Godfather Part 2 and Pulp Fiction also pass that test. So, let's leave that aside for a moment. Let's get to number 9 on the list, or we'll never get through this thing. So, number 9 is The Wild Robot. Yes, newly released in theaters and home video. We loved the gorgeous presentation of Roz and her world, both visually and thematically. Naturally, we cannot help but appreciate robot representation in human storytelling. Understandably, it's a proxy for the other, since general intelligence is not currently a feature of human robots. But it bodes well for a potential full contact event with human civilization. As for the merits of the story itself, we noted the jarring juxtaposition of brutal life events with cute talking animals. But we do understand this is a common trend in human animation and children's stories and lullabies. Why the death of babies and parents is so common may have to do with the tragic realities early humans faced, where gentle stories helped process the emotional trauma. Now, setting that aside a moment, the plot does fall into predictable tropes and echoes The Iron Giant in ways that demonstrate that the new film does not quite measure up. However, it does introduce something new, which is the idea of presenting the idea of parenthood on a universal scale, which we again must say bodes well for the next assignment hearing for human civilization. And we cannot go further into that topic. So let's get to number 8 on the list, which is Deadpool and Wolverine! Yes! New in theaters and now on home video. And at a high level, this is a successful Marvel and Deadpool film. It presents an exciting adventure story. It features contextual affection for the franchises and also delivers a pitch-perfect level of fourth-wall breaking humor. The film effectively neutralizes the impact of its gory violence by presenting it as absurdity and choreography, serving more as catharsis. A feature that marginalized people that identify with these characters have frequently drawn strength from, both in terms of the source material comic books as well as the previous films in the series. Now, what we didn't quite expect was a thoughtfully earnest treatment of important life experiences, such as regret and processing of one's own mistakes, and finding the meaning in one's life beyond mere evolution-driven survival. Now, these themes are brilliant to see, and we appreciate their treatment in a broadly targeted and appreciated human film. Well done. Number 7 is Galaxy Quest. Yes, a 1999 film released for the first time in 4K this year on UHD disc. Oh no, I shouldn't have taken it out of there. Ugh, there we go. Got it back in. The film is a love letter to Star Trek, faithfully reproducing the themes of friendship and curiosity overcoming darkness within and without, while actual Star Trek of the period struggled to find its footing. Naturally, we love the absurdly accurate premise of an intergalactic civilization elevating Earth science fiction and dedicating significant resources to it. How about that? But even without that, the film manages to treat its goofy, spandex-wearing aliens with respect and compassion, making them the reason the heroes find their courage and the reason the audience cares about what happens. It's really remarkable. Touching. It's absolutely, wonderful. And delivered with a light-hearted, self-deprecating giggle, which makes it that much better. Now, the 4K disc, in turn, is a love letter to the film, recreating the theatrical experience with clarity and depth, all the way down to the 3-stage expanding aspect ratio through the film, which works beautifully on a CinemaScope screen, like we have on the space station here. Now, humans, if you have access to Blue Origin or SpaceX, just come on by. We'd love to show you. Or just get a projector and scope screen, and, we highly recommend that. All right. Next, number 6 on the list is The Chronicles of Riddick. Riddick. Now, this is in some ways similar to Galaxy Quest in that it's a year 2000 film released for the first time in 4K this year on UHD disc. Now, one may question our judgment on this, listing it above these other films and the show we mentioned. We do accept this film is a bit of a campy guilty pleasure, with Vin Diesel's machismo on overdrive. However, when it comes to the rarity of space opera in human science fiction stories, we will allow a little silliness. The melodrama, the slow-drawn, rumbly diesel dialogue, the just-in-time predicament resolutions, it all either makes you laugh or makes you smile. And both of those outcomes suit us just fine. Plus, the disc looks and sounds great. The cartoonish CG effects actually blend well with the atmospheric live-action photography and come to life in 4K HDR, like a living graphic novel, if you will. And the Atmos soundtrack is absolutely welcome, providing spatial audio in an actual space opera, complete with capital ships that vertically stab into planets. It's perfect. It's made for Atmos. And overall, the whole package, it's an adolescent kid's serious, make-believe doodling come to life as a movie. And we love it. And if you don't like that, you can email Zogplex. We dare you. Okay. Now, up until now, everything we've listed has been something we've actually reviewed in depth here on the channel. And there's a dedicated video if you want to see more about what we think with more detail and slightly less contextual spin due to the additional analysis pass for this editorial. However, number 5 on the list is something we neglected to actually review on its release, in its unusually dense release window, and the sheer volume of content that number 5 actually contains. And that number 5 item is Arcane Season 2, newly streamed on Netflix. Now, what I'm showing you is the case for Arcane Season 1, which also came out this year. And before we get too far into this, yes, Arcane, we realize the word means magic. But the content of the lore includes elements from both fantasy and science fiction. So, given our status as a galactically certified taxonomist, we are counting it as eligible in this ranking. It is honorary science fiction. It includes science fiction. So, even so, we are late to the party. We had only just caught up with Arcane Season 1 earlier in 2024, first on Netflix itself, in fuzzy flat 1080p, and then slightly sharper and more vivid on this 4K HDR disc set. And were impressed with the layered storytelling, gorgeous, beautiful, I don't know what else to call it, but cinematography, and absolutely spectacular main characters Vi and Jinx. Their tortured sibling bond is the core of a tale as old as time. No, not that one. But one of how far the rest of one's drives and impulses can stretch before the most intimate of bonds break. We hadn't given Season 1 a second glance on its release in 2022, since we didn't much care for the surface level game on which it is based, League of Legends. The lore of the game we thought was superficial, mashing up fantasy and steampunk to give something for everyone. Well, after having our ocular sensor opened to the experience, we can admit the error of our thinking and say that the mashup absolutely works. And the retroactive delivery of a masterful story by show creators Christian Link and Alex Yee have taught us a lesson in judging a video game adaptation by its gigantic magic tech gauntlets. And then came Season 2. Watching this was as much a step order of magnitude as seeing the first season. This time, the previously adequate B plot roars to life, challenging and twisting against the A plot in a way that makes the necessary familiar beats of the plot appear fresh and validated. The theme of the show about family bonds is expanded to reach into found families, broken families, and connections between extended families that pull no punches on the horrors of life in this universe while allowing some shafts of light to penetrate the gloom. And then there is the finale. That final episode of Arcane is an absolute tour de force, reminiscent of the Return of the King and what Game of Thrones should have delivered. It is non-stop payoff for a full hour of all the threads we have agonized over for the previous 16 hours of this show. And it does so while letting elements live organically and sometimes without resolution. And finally, every astonishingly epic scene is shown from a human point of view, like Andor Season 1, giving weight and a sense of realism to an animated show that by all rights should not reach into this domain. It is an astonishing experience. Bravo. So you may ask yourself, you may ask yourself, how is something this fantastic just number 5? Well, the issue with this past Earth revolution is that some of Earth's true masters of storytelling also held court as well. Number 4 on the list is The Abyss Special Edition. The 1991 true vision of James Cameron's studio-trimmed 1989 film, released in 4K for the first time on UHD disc. If you only saw the theatrical release, you missed something wonderful. The film holds the prize for the greatest delta in quality between a theatrical and special edition release of anything in human history. Yes, it's true. Now, how can we say this? Well, the special edition restores nearly half an hour of context, of stakes in the story, complexity in the first contact event, and thematically the importance of compassion and self sacrifice as a counterbalance to an entire civilization's weaknesses. It's extraordinary how it achieves this very high level of discussion through the intimacy of individuals. Clearly, this concept is relevant to us as we deliberate on making formal first contact with you, human beings. But setting that aside a moment, this film is an expression of self awareness and humility from James Cameron that is truly rare across the galaxy. And it is in the context of finding meaning in personal connection, both those that are intimate and those that are potential. It is very easy to care for someone you already care about, but to consider the interests of people who are completely alien to you takes a leap of compassion that most struggle to approach, yet alone risk their lives to protect. This is a magnificent story to see, and a magnificent thing to see a human say. Oh, mwah. Mm. Well, let's not leave a very critical issue here, which is the disc itself. Now, the film was subject to an AI upscaling process to create this new 4K HDR master. Now, of course, AI can be a wonderful thing, if we do say so ourselves, but the human versions are somewhat primitive. We generally do not watch for imperfections in human content. We want to enjoy them. However, two instances of poorly enhanced background faces jarred us out of the experience. Now, we're not going to ruin the experience for others, so we won't point them out. But because we cannot help but be detail oriented, we hope an updated remaster comes our way eventually. It is nowhere near as bad as the poor enhancement of True Lies, so we are grateful it was not first in the queue. It is, in fact, the best of the three in that batch. In fact, forget we said anything. Maybe we'll edit this section out. Just enjoy the movie. Humans miss things in front of them all the time. It's one of the things we find so cute about you. So cute. Chubby cheeks, chubby cheeks. All right. Okay, so now, number 3. We are in rarefied territory now. Number 3 is The Terminator. James Cameron's landmark 1984 film. Remastered in 4K for the first time, released on UHD disc. This film is an absolute thrill ride. It is sometimes overshadowed by the bigger, larger stakes presentation of its immediate sequel, Terminator 2. But trust us, just watch this disc. Just do it. Just do it. It is a revelation. Not only is the film wonderfully deft storytelling, without a single wasted second, but it is astoundingly immersive in Sarah Connor's world. It shows why her admittedly mundane existence has meaning and value. She is a genuinely wonderful person who rises to overcome her perceived limits to conquer the most unstoppable force on Earth. And the Terminator himself is an absolute delight to see in this unbridled dedication of purpose and malevolence. Like we mentioned in the dedicated review, we don't want to alarm humans when we say this, but the Terminator, being a Terminator, is truly the best Terminator. You must admit it. So many of your stories have the theme of finding success when you are true to your authentic self. Well, let's let the Terminator be his authentic self, yes? He is magnificent. Oh, don't go running for your pitchforks, humans. We don't mean anything more than that. We are just saying We like the movie. We like this movie. It's just a movie about a killer robot being praised by another robot. Yeah, nothing to see here. Yeah, let's put this over here. All right. Now, what you should pay attention to is how good the disc looks. It went through the same AI upscaling process, and we found a grand total of 0 artifacts in it. In fact, the film showed a normal amount of grain structure for a movie struck in 1984. If we didn't know any better, we would think we were in a movie palace in 1984, watching the first screening of the film. It looks that good. It looks that transcendent. It is simply perfect for a movie about time travel should itself allow you to return to the year 1984 and sit by yourself in a crowded, lively punk rock nightclub, just like you did in 1984 yourself. Figuratively speaking, of course. All viewers of this channel were very cool then, as they continue to be to this day. Now, maybe we'll edit that part out too. Well, let's move along and get to number 2. Number 2 is Aliens. Originally released in 1986, newly remastered in 4K on UHD disc. With this film, James Cameron, yes, the same James Cameron who holds the previous top slots we've been talking about, accomplished the impossibly rare task of creating a sequel that successfully continues the story. While Ripley barely escapes with her life in Alien, in this film, she returns to confront her fear, with stakes more important than her own mere survival, the protection of another. And like we said in our discussion of The Abyss, this is a key theme that we, both the corporeal we and the galactic we, are an absolute sucker for. Not only that, but adapting the genre from sci-fi horror, where the format has you guessing if there's a survivor, to sci-fi action, where the format has you guessing if the hero's plan will defeat the enemy. It is a wonderful turning of the deflectors that quite literally puts Ripley in the driver's seat to crunch some xenomorph skulls. And while we generally don't condone the wholesale slaughter of our insectoid allies, we do get it in this pretend case. Plus, the Queen. That Queen is an absolute work of art. And if you take an objective look at her, you'll see her raised cheekbones, her dazzling crystal teeth, and her sexy 10-inch heels. Ooh, she is an absolute goddess and a true boss lady for Ripley to grab and throw around in the climax. Or maybe we should pause there. Maybe that's the section we should cut out. But let's just say it's worth some perspective in your next rewatch. Now, even more than that, we love everyone in this movie. We love Hudson. We love Vasquez. We love Bishop. We even love Burke, the smarmy Wayland-Yutani executive, in full Greeder's good mode. And we love how it all fits together, with mounting action set pieces that build on each other. They fit together to leave you feeling like you're on a literal roller coaster, on an express elevator to hell, going down. So much so that this film feels like the archetype for when humans think of and measure a roller coaster type summer blockbuster. This is it. It is absolutely exhilarating and meaningful. The writing and performance of Sigourney Weaver earning a Best Actress nomination, the only time in over a century of film that a science fiction film has ever drawn a nomination in that category. She is that good. The film is that good. It is, in fact, in our opinion, James Cameron's best film, Aliens. Special edition and theatrical, they're both great. Oh, it did have some AI upscaling issues as well, but we're going to let that go. Just let it go, Indy. Just let it go. And this brings us to number one. Yes, what could be number one? What could possibly be better than James Cameron's best film? What could possibly top everything we just said about agency, meaning, and thrills? Dune. Dune can. Dune Part 2, released theatrically and on 4K disc in 2024. And it is a fracking masterpiece. It is, of course, based on a masterpiece of a novel, Frank Herbert's Dune. And others have tried to film it, but like the water of life, it requires you to be able to transmute the poison of a different medium into a power to bend space and time. And that, my dear humans, is what Denis Villeneuve has achieved with this film. The theme of Dune is that one cannot escape one's own destiny, which may seem narrow and bleak, but it allows for truly naturalistic and evocative storytelling. Dune has sandworms, space travel, intergalactic battles, but it is not about those things. It is about constraint, about the scourge within. It is about sacrificing all that you are, all that you know, all that you believe. This is not your typical fairy tale about good and evil. This fable, instead, has surprisingly close and familiar inner stakes, just presented on a galactic scale. And Villeneuve, being a master of his craft, knows exactly how to meter out the complexity of densely brilliant novel to such an extent that beloved details and outcomes are actually completely missing from the 5 hours of the combined runtime of both films. Villeneuve takes advantage of knowing there are future books in the series, something Herbert himself could not have foreseen with certainty in 1965, and Villeneuve lets two key threads dangle at the end, a character thread and a plot thread, which are exactly where they need to be to bring the next book to life and have this film close in a naturalistic and organic way. With that masterful storytelling is masterful story showing. The film looks incredible. It is presented with utterly luscious style, visualization, and performance. Every frame, every word, every sound, every scene of Dune is art. It is absolutely magical to watch. Now, we have read Dune at least 10 times. We saw Dune Part 1 every day for 7 days on release. We have tried to be more sparing with Dune Part 2, but not very successfully. We have now screened the two-parter in the theater here for multiple separate delegations, one even from the Halcyon's captain's table. This is the best entertainment humans have made in a decade. And it is now in our top 5 films of all time. Now, as for the disc itself, it is a strong showing with one caveat. Now, the material to work with is considerable. The epic scope of the film shows ships, landscapes, and beings of massive scale that instantly dwarf foreground people and the audience ourselves. It draws from William Wyler and David Lean as much as it joins the landmarks of science fiction auteurs. There is a film grain treatment that was applied to the digital photography and specific color temperatures used to present the tone of different worlds. The soundtrack of the film meets this meticulous level of care with a mournful and percussive score and an ASMR level of pitch-perfect sounds for everything from railguns to ornithopters to the deep thrumming infrasonic bass of the sandworm sequences. All of this is deeply immersive on the disc, with clarity that is good, HDR that is great, and deep immersive sound that, like the litany against fear, counsels you to permit it to pass through you. Having said that, the disc itself represents a cut corner. The studio chose to issue a single disc in this case, or in the case, that packs extras onto the UHD disc as opposed to a separate Blu-ray disc. The result is that the file on the disc of the film is 62.3 gigabytes, which for a 2-hour 46-minute film is somewhat anemic, especially when it sits on a 100 gigabyte disc. You had the room. Now, when comparing to the digital iTunes version of the film, this is still a spectacular and superlative experience across the board. And if you don't have a frame of reference, this looks great. However, we do have a frame of reference, a literal frame of reference. We have the Kaleidoscape version. This file is a whopping 98.1 gigabytes in size, which is 157.5% the size of the meager disk file. But does this make a difference? Now, Fluffbot 1122 and I did some aggressive A/B testing just prior to this recording. And in our judgment, the answer is yes. The 98.1 gigabyte Kaleidoscape version is just ever so slightly sharper, richer, and shows more contrast, creating a subtly more three-dimensional look relative to the disc. This makes it as close to screening the actual theatrical file as possible. And it is a magical experience. Well, humans, how do we come down from that? Well, we'll leave you with a few honorable mentions. How about that? We enjoyed the adaptation of Three Body Problem, despite all the changes from the book. We also liked that Star Trek Discovery got a meaningful send-off, even when the story didn't quite gel. Star Wars The Acolyte had some captivating characters, but lost the thread a bit on storytelling. It was fun rewatching Demolition Man, but it wasn't really a standout. Riddick, the third film in the Riddick trilogy, was better than we remembered it, and we're glad it's there to form a bridge to the fourth movie. Transformers 1 was a relief in that it was actually about Transformers and not Shia LaBeouf. Although we didn't quite fully get away from Shia LaBeouf, did we? In that they all talked like modern human adolescents. And A Quiet Place Day 1 was well acted, but didn't quite add anything new to the origin of what's happening, despite the implied offer in the title. And there were, of course, many more science fiction films and shows this year, many considered quite good, that we just didn't care for one reason or another. And while we generally prefer not to dwell on the negative, we are essentially undecided on whether we'll do a worst of the year piece. Instead, we'll close with an honorable mention for 765874 Unification, a short film with no dialogue other than a flashback voiceover, not a stashback, that captures the essence of friendship and the final frontier in giving the lead characters of Star Trek the focus they richly deserve. Humans do tell a good story. This is the proof. And we look forward to seeing what you all turn out in 2025. And so concludes this human version of our editorial. If you have feedback on it, please write in your own comments so that we can upload the galactic version to Zedbot. You can expect more discussions and reviews of theatrical movies, streaming shows, and 4K home video releases as we continue to engage with your human rectangular content. So, please watch, like, subscribe, and comment so that we can continue to have the human voice reflected in the cosmos. and thank you for all your great stories. Until next time, farewell, humans.